Hi guys, good evening and welcome back once again to the EdWord. I'm your host Eddie, and in tonight's video I will be discussing what I thought of the latest episode of our favorite spin-off show, AMC's Fear the Walking Dead. It dropped just a few short minutes ago. I just finished watching it, and before I jump into my review, of course, per usual with all my episode reviews, this is a spoiler-filled episode review. Again, if you're not caught up on Fear the Walking Dead by this episode, or perhaps the past couple of episodes, don't keep watching or listening, as I will be going into major spoilers, plot details, character scenes, all that jazz. Okay, so that's your spoiler warning. You have been warned. Let's jump right into it. Big improvement from last week's episode. This one was a lot more engaging, a bit more exciting, and a lot more intriguing too. We got some great one-on-one character scenes, lots of awesome Morgan Grace bonding scenes, possibly planting the seeds for a potential budding romance. And if that final scene was any indicator that they're developing feelings for each other, I think that's a strong possibility that they could become romantically entangled at some moment. I also love the scene where Dwight deals with one of Logan's goons, and how he ends up getting the upper hand, and then basically pulling a Daryl and letting him go instead of killing him, even though he had every right to. But I loved how the guy was kind of like a representation of Dwight's former self, or his past life, his life as a savior. And now Dwight probably saw a lot of qualities in that guy that reminded him of his former life, and that's probably why he's trying to do right, by himself and by the world, and let this guy go. Although it might come back to bite him in the ass, although the guy seemed genuinely surprised that Dwight was willing to let him walk free, even though he obviously took his vehicle. But that's okay. That guy will find his Logan's group with no problem, I'm sure. But getting back to the mall storyline, I love the fact that it took place within a mall, because I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but it felt like almost like a homage to Dawn of the Dead. Like the whole sequence of getting the generator and the power turned on is something that happens in the original Dawn of the Dead, one of my absolute favorite zombie films from the late masterful George A. Romero. And I believe his work have had a big impact on people like Robert Kirkman and other people who work on The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. So I thought that was pretty cool that most of this episode took place inside a mall with some great character bonding and dialogue moments. And then it was so cool. Dwight got a haircut, looking nice and clean-shaven and less psychotic. But he looked good, and I'm glad that Daniel was also happy to finally give him a trim, because he was just itching to cut his hair. So that was pretty cool. I also loved the fact, even though it was a little sad at the end, where Morgan tells Grace he's not going back with her to the rest of the convoy, because he's going out there to watch Alicia's back, because she's his student and he's the teacher. He wants to look out for her. But I think that was just a cop-out, because he's afraid of the growing attraction and feelings he's probably feeling towards Grace. And I thought that was so interesting after he had just convinced her, or basically kind of called her out in a polite, friendly way, for being afraid or not taking the initiative or acting on your feelings. And then in the very final shot of the episode, he's the one who ends up literally running away or driving away. I thought that was a very interesting development, how he spent like the whole episode where they were opening up to each other, and then in the final shots, right when they have a chance to bond and get to know each other even more, he takes off. And I was like, damn, Morgan. And you could tell based on the look in her face how hurt she was and how hurt he was too. And I think it's because he's afraid that he becomes involved with her romantically and he loses her, he might lose himself all over again. So that might be why. It might have been like a defense mechanism he was using. But, besides that last shot of the episode, I really, really enjoyed this whole episode. It had some great zombie kills and fight sequences in it. That nasty walker kill in the beginning where Dwight gets the axe in the shoulder of the walker and just pulls it back and forth repeatedly, hitting its head against the wall till it dies, was brilliant and also kind of hilarious too. But another thing that I noticed and I enjoyed about this episode is that I saw the director's name, Ron Underwood. I'm like, God, why does that name sound so familiar? So during a commercial break, I look him up. I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly who I thought it is. This is the guy who directed Tremors and City Slickers. How cool they got a big-time movie director to direct an episode of this show. And I thought that was just so cool. So I was really happy to see that a guy who's dabbled in horror before, in this case, the first Tremors film, which is like one of my favorite creature features, now got to have a hand in the Walking Dead universe. So I was pretty happy to see that. Overall, solid episode. Much bigger, a much needed improvement from last week's episode, which was the mid-season premiere. I feel like if they continue along the storyline of Morgan's friends and trying to continue out the Goodwill mission while trying to avoid Logan and his gang of ex-truckers who are trying to find this gas for one reason or another, sets us up for some pretty interesting intersecting storylines. So I'm looking forward. All right, guys, what did you think of this episode? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you expecting more? Expecting less? Do you think Morgan and Grace will become a couple? If so, sound off down below in the comments section. I'd love to hear your input. Thanks again for watching. Fear the Walking Dead airs new episodes every Sunday night on AMC. Have a wonderful rest of your night, and of course, until next time, may the Force be with you.